Morning, how are you doing today? Unfortunately, Naomi, I think your mic is muted. Can you please just unmute your mic?
Yeah, it is. Sorry about that. I thought I was muted. No, thank you very much, Azola. I am fine, as I was saying. Yes, I'm fine, thank you. And morning also to the audience that has joined us.
Thank you so much. I'm glad that you're fine. I'm also fantastic. I really, really love the classes. I love the colors. Everything is working. I need to actually get myself a new frame. Given that it's been COVID, I sat on my frame a couple of days ago and it's just been really difficult to get a new frame, but I'm loving the classes. Great look. Thank you so much for joining us. We know you're very busy right now, being the head of pre-investment at IDC, particularly with what's happening in the country with the COVID-19 pandemic and how it's affected business in general, Yeah. So thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule to join us. And yeah, to all the listeners, thank you as well for joining us on our platform. ETTP is a platform that informs, inspires, and equips today. So we're providing information from the Industrial Development Corporation. We've got Naomi here today, who'll be just telling us a little bit about what the IDC is doing, the different funding that is available, the application process, and any other questions that you as viewers might have. Please feel free to let us know on our chat platform. Please ask us any question. Naomi is here to help and to really give information to the public in general. So Naomi, maybe to start off, please maybe tell us about your role at the IDC as in pre-investment.
Oh, thank you. Yes, my name is Naomi Mjali. I am the manager in the Pre-Investment Business Center in the IDC. So the role of the PIBC is to screen and assess applications that come through for funding. We focus mainly on the Gauteng region. The IDC, however, does have a national footprint. So we're represented in all the 9 provinces. They are also headed by regional managers, fully operational. And I think I need to add, Azola, that although we are working away from home, we are available, we are accessible, we have all the necessary technology and tools to be accessible to our clients. So our role really is to provide our business units with a pipeline of transactions that come through after we have screened and assessed them for viability and economic merit.
Multiple access points. So can people access you? You spoke about regional centers, because I know your offices are here in Sandton. So can people access you at different regional points or Sandton or via your website?
Yeah, so we have different multiple options that people can use to apply. We have our head office in Sandton, and we have a walk-in center. However, due to the regulations now of the lockdown, we are not, people are not able to come through for face-to-face meetings. However, they can access us via our call center. It's at callcenter@idc.co.za. They can call us on our national call center. And in our regional offices as well, all the regional offices have access to telephone as well as technology that they can, that our clients can get access to. So physically, no interaction. However, we are available remotely via all our regional offices are operational. We also have satellite offices within some of our regions as well. So people can really do access us via our online portal as well. They can email us, they can call us. We are available also on our national landline. So we really are operational.
Okay, no, that's fantastic to hear. So let's assume I'm Azola, I'm owning Azola Enterprises, and I'm going through this period. I know the IDC focuses primarily on industrial companies in general. So with this COVID-19, if I want to apply, do I need to be in the industrial space, manufacturing? Is there a certain sector limitation in terms of which type of companies is the IDC funding?
Yeah, we do have a mandate and we are sector specific. IDC primarily focuses on the manufacturing sector. In terms of services, there are limited service, what we would refer to as services that we provide funding to in the tourism sector, for instance, and also in terms of IT, we do have those services that we provide. However, the focus is mainly on manufacturing. We have different sectors: agro-processing, clothing and textiles, wood, paper, machinery, chemicals. So we do have that. However, due to this pandemic now, IDC has set aside special funds to address the lockdown, the pandemic, as well as the resulting lockdown. Obviously, noting that the impact on companies is actually quite dire, looking at restrictions on transport, companies having to, some of them having to shut down. So those are some of the responses we've put in place. I'll be talking around our funds. We've primarily have 3 funds that we've set aside to try and address the impact of COVID as well as the lockdown.
Okay, so maybe tell us a little bit about those 3 different types of funds that you speak of.
Yeah, I think what I should do, Azola, let me just present. I'll present them because it's going to be easy for our audience as well to have a look at them, and so that it can inform the type of questions that will follow later on. So I'm going to share my screen with you.
Yes, fantastic. Thank you so much.
Please let me know as soon as it shows.
Will do, definitely. Yes, we can see, I can see your screen, and I'm sure all the listeners can see it as well.
Yeah, I'm going to put it on slideshow so that it's speaking now. Okay, thank you. Is that visible?
Yes, it's visible. It's 100%.
Okay, and just to add about the IDC briefly, for those that might not be aware of who we were established in 1940 to address economic growth as well as industrial development. We are 100% owned by government. We report to the Department of Trade, Industry and Competition under the leadership of Minister Ibrahim Patel. The advent of COVID, the associated lockdown as well, obviously presented a significant risk to companies and people alike, as we know. And in response to this risk, we've seen quite a number of funds available that the government has set aside. Some of those include the guarantee scheme that is managed by the banks. Some include the funds that are managed by the likes of CFA, the likes of NEF. In addition to that, IDC also set aside funding interventions to alleviate the impact of the pandemic on our economy, but mostly so on our business partners. Let me speak around the impact that we, from an IDC perspective, have seen in terms of these companies, noting that cash flow and working capital are the bloodline of a lot of companies, and notably SMEs. So the impact that we've seen around that is on production. Because of the lockdown, a lot of companies' production has been limited, mainly from a capacity as well as capability perspective. We look at when companies have to go on short-term, reducing the number of staff that they can have on the premises, that obviously impacts on their capability to produce the product. But also the supply chain, due to the restrictions on transport, the movement of goods and services has obviously been restricted. So that's the impact that we've seen on a lot of companies. They're not able to get their raw materials in. They're not able to actually also deliver on the raw materials that they have. And key to this for us was the impact on the SMEs. I think it's much more so. Why? Because they really deliver services to a lot of manufacturing companies, the big retailers. They deliver service or provide services to the likes of multinationals as well as to government. And as a result, the impact on them is that those companies that are closing down, the huge multinationals, when they close down, the impact is that the SMEs now have to hold their production and their services, so they also now cannot provide to those. The reduced demand, obviously, with people being locked at home, we're not shopping as much as we used to because we're not able to go to malls. So there is reduced demand generally. However, what we've seen is there has been an increase in demand for food and food products. So that the cancellation of orders as well that we've seen, deferral of contracts, really that has had an impact on companies. It has impacted their ability to generate revenue, their ability to then get income for their businesses. And some of them, we have to be honest, and sadly so, they face the threat of closure. Let me pause here, Azola, if there are any questions that you would like to pose based on this, and we can I'll go through to the next screen just to discuss the funds.
Yeah, all I can say is like really like what you've just mentioned, that the smaller companies are really affected mainly like because maybe they're supplying to multinationals or bigger corporates. We've seen this in our businesses, like as Property Point, we're an incubator. I'm one of the program managers, and some of my businesses, you know, that I advise are businesses which are essential service. So they're allowed to open right now, but the products that they use in their business are businesses which aren't essential services. So this has had a ripple effect, even though maybe you are operational as an essential service. Unfortunately, where you get your supplies or your consumables in order for you to get your product to the end customer has been compromised because of the break in the supply chain. So I totally like agree 100% with what you're saying. I just want to open up the floor to the listeners. Please remember, Naomi is here. Questions are open at the floor at any time. Obviously, we're engaging, but we'd love this session to be really interactive and to be for the public. So all the listeners, please feel free to ask questions at any point in time. No, Naomi, for me, like you can carry on.
Yeah, okay, great. And you mentioned the fact that, you know, it's not only companies that supply products that are impacted, but I think generally the public. So what we've done with the IDC, we've got, I'm going to display 3 funds. You spoke about essential services and products. So there is a special fund, COVID-19 Essential Service and Product Fund that we have established. This is the one that's displaying now. This one is really in relation to either the curbing, not curbing, pardon me, the curbing and the management of the pandemic. So this fund is short-term in nature. It's not necessarily a long or medium term, because IDC primarily focuses on long to medium to long-term funding. This is short-term. It's for businesses that have orders or contracts to provide essential services and products. So I will refer our listeners to our IDC website, because it's got an extensive list of what we consider to be essential services and products. So there are certain services that are considered essential, but they're not necessarily essential to combat or to curb or to manage COVID. So we just need to make a distinction there for our listeners to understand. Only items necessary, as I have said, for the COVID-19 response will be considered under this fund. We will give preference to local manufacturers. However, I indicated that IDC does provide funding to the manufacturing sector. For this particular fund, what we have done, we give consideration to companies that import some of these products, essential products or services. We do not necessarily finance the import of products or services because we want to focus on local manufacturing. However, we've made a concession to also provide funding to those companies that have been doing it. They have been providing or importing essential services and products. However, now they need funding because they've been awarded a contract or an offtake agreement by either government or multinational company. I need to just add that for this fund, we do not finance middlemen. By middlemen is Naomi gets a contract, she gets awarded a contract, and then I go to Azola and say, Azola, I have this contract, I won't be able to fulfill it all. Can you supply me with, let's say, masks? Azola now goes and comes to the IDC and says, I need funding to get masks to supply to Naomi. For us, we consider you, Azola, to be the middleman, and we would not necessarily finance you. So it's not intended for middlemen, yeah.
So basically you're saying outsourcing companies, like you're just looking at the primary business. So if I outsource like any service of mine, it means I would not qualify for like the funding.
So maybe repeat that. If you outsource your service, if you get a contract directly from either a multinational or government, a strong customer, if you yourself get that contract and you need to deliver on it, yes, you can come to us. But if you get a contract via me, almost like a subcontractor,
Oh, okay.
Because then we consider you to be a middleman. You're just procuring that to sell to me, and then I'm selling to the other customer. So we wouldn't finance you in that respect. But however, if you yourself get that contract, it's awarded to you, and you then need funding to fulfill that contract or the order, then yes, definitely we can consider you for funding. As I said, it's short term. It's 3 months. And it's got its minimum requirements as well, which I will go through as I present.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
No, that's very clear. I just want to, I'm looking at the screen there. It's written essential medical supplies. Is that like a list exhaustive? Because I was on your website a couple of days ago, and it refers to the National Treasury list. So I just wanted, like, maybe for our listeners to get some clarity whether is the list on medical supplies exhaustive or including that of the National Treasury list?
No, this list is not exhaustive. It would have been very difficult to fit everything into this. Look, I mean, we might not have listed everything, and I think as we have seen with the pandemic now, it's so difficult to pin down. A couple of months ago, it was reported that children are not necessarily impacted or affected or infected. However, we've seen now that children do actually get infected, and sadly, we have seen children losing their lives. So I think it's a moving target, and so some of what we consider essential services or products or medical supplies might change, and we will update this as it goes. But however, this is the list as per the National Treasury guidelines. I mean, we wouldn't necessarily consider toilet paper, for instance, and I know it is listed here, but we do not consider it to be an essential service right at this stage. We do not know what's going to happen. If we do have a shortage in a couple of months' time, then it might come back onto the list as an essential product or service. So no, it's not exhaustive. We are guided by National Treasury, but it has to be also then informed by our mandate as well.
All right. No, thank you for that clarity.
Yes, so I'm going to go through to the next screen. In response to the impact as well, what we have done as the IDC is then put aside what we call distressed funds. These are funds for companies that are distressed as a result of COVID. Critically here, what I need to mention is that companies need to demonstrate that their impact is as a result of COVID directly. So if you've been, an example is a company that has been loss-making previously, and comes to IDC and say, okay, it's because of COVID, we won't be able to entertain that because we need to see the direct impact of COVID. And we spoke about the lockdown. So a company that has had its orders canceled or put on hold, the company that has had to shut down or go on semi-lockdown, companies that are impacted because they're not operating, they're not able to then pay their rent, their loans. Those are the companies that can come to us and say, as a direct result of COVID, I'm not able to operate fully, and therefore I require funding to tie me down for the next couple of months. And what we also saw, you mentioned, gave an example of Azola having a company. We saw the need for SMEs, especially, and as I indicated, that they are really also quite hard impacted by the lockdown and the pandemic. So IDC then set aside a fund, 300 million rand funds, specifically for SMEs. And for us, what we're saying here is companies with a turnover of 50 million rand and below, it's capped at 15 million rand, also can then come and apply to IDC under the IDC Small Industrial Finance Distress Fund. So we've got two funds here. The relief funding for distressed businesses, it includes our clients as well. And we also have set aside one for small SMEs, small and medium enterprises. It's priced at prime -3 as well. And the other one has a different pricing because then it's for companies that are larger in our definition.
All right. No, thank you for that. Yeah. Like, I see when you talk about prime less 3%, that's like really a proper concessionary funding, like with very, favorable interest rates, like relative, at least to the market. But you spoke at some point about like our clients. So like, I just want to know, like, is there different qualifying criteria for businesses which aren't your clients And is there a different qualifying criteria for businesses that are currently your clients?
To an extent, and I'll qualify that, because businesses that are our clients, we will have a track record. We will have an understanding of what they do. We have information on those businesses, information in terms of their management. We have information in terms of how they've been conducting their account. So to an extent, yes. However, generally, where the commonality is we require a turnaround strategy. Irrespective of whether you're an existing IDC client or a new one, when you apply, especially under the COVID distress funding, we would like to see you present us with a turnaround strategy in terms of when do you think your business is going to turn around? And really, I do not think anybody at this stage can tell when the economy is going to turn. Globally, nobody can pinpoint exactly when we will turn, and whether we will even get to pre-COVID status after this. I don't think so. It will take time to get to the pre-COVID status. However, we would like those companies, because they know their operations very well. They know what has impacted them. So they will have to then come to us and say, this is how long I think I'm going to be impacted, and this is how long it will take me to recover to the levels where I can comfortably say I'll be able to repay. Because importantly, Azola, to mention here is that these are not grants, these are loans.
Yes.
It's going to have an impact on the company's balance sheet. So companies have to think very, very thoroughly about taking on additional debt onto their balance sheet, because as IDC, we do expect it to be repaid. We go out to markets to borrow funds as well, and we have to repay it. We do not go to the fiscus, we do not go to treasury to get funding. As yet, to date, IDC has been self-financing. We go out and borrow money, and we have to pay it back. And obviously we are charged interest as well. So that borrowing comes with a cost. And so we do expect that these funds that we have set aside have to be repaid. And so our screening is critical. It's thorough to make sure that the companies that we are advancing funds to will be able to repay us. So not every person who comes to us, unfortunately, will qualify for funding. And I think we have to be honest about this, because we need to see that companies will be able to repay. It will be unfair for us to give a company money noting that they might not necessarily be able to recover sufficiently to repay that loan. I mean, the impact on that is going to be dire for both IDC and our clients and the companies that come to us.
Yes, definitely. I think it's very important that you mentioned that it is a loan, because like we've seen with a lot of businesses, well, the businesses I work with, that has been like, one of the things where some people are thinking it's a grant, but actually it is a loan. For me, one interesting thing is like myself, I have like a strong finance background. So like a lot of the terms that are used and, the qualifying criteria, I understand quite well. But like for someone like a small business, when you talk about like turnaround strategy, I'm assuming like the IDC will require something like a financial model. And like when you're looking for a financial model, like, it requires some sort of expertise. So I'd like to know, is the IDC offering any business support, like in terms of applying for these funds, where like an entrepreneur will be assisted with like showcasing that turnaround strategy or recovery model, if I may say?
Yeah, thanks for that. I mean, that's actually quite critical that you ask. We do have business support intervention. We do have a business support team internally. What we would look at is where the need is for our clients. Is there a need for us to provide business support? And we do not do it ourselves. We do use a panel of consultants. We do use people who are experts in those fields to assist our clients. That also in itself is not necessarily a full grant. The business support portion of it has to be repaid. So we would offer 50% of it would be a grant, 50% of it would then come onto the balance sheet as a loan. So that business support is to help identify where the gaps are. And then those gaps will have to be plugged. So if a client says, I'm not able to provide you, especially startups, with financial projections, as an IDC, we would not necessarily do those projections for you, because then we would be conflicted. We cannot, be referee and payer at the same time. So we would then get somebody else to assist you. However, we would need to see when we provide business support that you do have the potential to be funded. You know, we will not necessarily provide business support to all and sundry that come through our doors. I need to mention there are agencies that have been set aside, the likes of CEDA, that also provide some form of business support. So non-financial support is provided through the likes of CEDA, you know, the National Youth Agency as well, yes. Development Agency there. So there are a number of agencies that our clients and our potential clients can tap into to be assisted in order to make sure that they comply. There are quite a number of incubators that I myself have been, you know, privileged to work with to see if we can tap into some of those entrepreneurs and bring them on board to be funded. So by the time they come to us, they would have been assisted to provide us with a business case that we can really make an informed decision on. So business support is available. It is available to those companies that will qualify. It is not a full grant. It is part of it is repayable, and it goes onto the balance sheet of the client.
Thank you so much, Naomi, for that clarity. I'd just like to remind our listeners that please feel free to ask any questions at any point. We do want this to be as interactive as possible. Do follow our newsletter at www.ettp.co.za. And we're live also on YouTube right now, and follow us on all social media, Instagram, LinkedIn, as well as Twitter. Naomi, I'm enjoying the presentation. I think it's, let me allow you to carry on with the presentation.
Sure. Yeah, I think the next screen is also quite critical. This is what you spoke about in terms of the requirements. So we will require a business plan, and especially from clients that are not on our pipeline. Distressed applications will have to include a turnaround plan, as I had indicated. We require historical financial statements, and really for us is to see how you've been performing as well as your latest management accounts. So we want to see how you've been performing, where the impact for you as a company started in terms of the lockdown. We would also require clients to provide us with financial projections, just to show us when you're going to be turning around and when you'll be able to repay us. It's important for us to get that, because then we are able to model that into our own financial model, and we are able to see where the impact is, where the funding is going, and when the client is going to be able to repay us. We would like CVs of key management as well, just to see, especially from startups, whether the management have the necessary experience to provide the service that they say they're going to provide. And notably those that are applying under the COVID essential as well, would like to see their experience in this. The description of the project and products to be manufactured, where I've put this pointer here is for clients then to tell us under the distress funding, what is the project and what is going to be manufactured, and also what is going to be imported. And if it's a split, we would like the clients to also show us if there's a split between manufactured products as well as imported products. The copy of the contract or purchase order from government or reputable strong customer. It could be a retailer or it could be a multinational. Documentary evidence of product accreditation. And you know, Azola, with the COVID-19 pandemic, we've seen quite a number of masks out there. Yes. We've seen also some sanitizers that unfortunately some of them have been found to burn people. So we operate on the basis of products being accredited. So I think mostly it's SAPRA, the South African Health Regulation. So those products have to be accredited, you know, ventilators, sanitizers, masks, yes, beds, whatever a client is applying for, they need to prove with documentation that these products have been accredited. Quotations to support application of funds. So we'd like, if you are going to buy an equipment or you're adding an equipment, we would like to see the quotations thereof, as well as quotations from your suppliers. If you have a supplier overseas that's going to provide you with the products or the products, then we would need to see the quotations thereof. The payment terms from the suppliers. Do they want money upfront? You know, some suppliers would say, before I even put the goods onto the ship, I would need 50% upfront. So we would need to see the terms of those so that we can also model them in our financial model. Supply chain arrangements. How will the products be shipped? You know, how long will they take to arrive? You know, because that also impacts the client's working capital, and cash flow. Security that is available if you're an existing business, what security is there? Because some of them you'll find they've already got funding or they have loans from banks. And so if the banks have taken all the security, we need to see how our funding is going to be secured. We're not saying we will not fund you. We'll have to find whether there is a mechanism for us to share. The personal balance sheets of the client, the guarantor, we want to see whether the clients have the financial muscle to contribute to the funding. It's very risky, as you know. You indicated you're a financial person to get 100% funding. It's quite risky, and it really does not make sense sometimes, because the company really, you almost become a worker for the funder, because you're never actually able to exit if the company is overgeared. So these are the requirements, Azola, of our funding. And the list is not really exhaustive. I mean, there could be additional information we ask. If the client provides us info, if we're not clear around some of the information we've been given, we will engage with the client and get clarity around that. And we might require additional information in this regard.
All right. Okay. No, fantastic. Like a lot of people are probably asking themselves, like, there's so many of these funds available, like there's the UIF, there's the SA Futures, like there's the loan guarantee scheme. So like the slide you just showed to us, the one that you just took off now, particularly where you have that icon highlighting for the distress fund. You did say the distress fund, right?
Yes.
For that part, like, there's issues like equipment. Like, I know a lot of the funds aren't financing for equipment. So like probably a lot of our listeners are thinking, is this the key difference between the IDC fund and the other funds? In terms of being able to do import funding, being able to purchase equipment, because equipment obviously is not part of like working capital. It's not part of your expenditure.
No, it's a capital item. Yeah.
Yeah. So are those the key differences between this fund and the other funds that are available?
I think there are notably significant differences. What we're saying with our distress funding is we will not necessarily finance salaries and wages. And it's because there are funds set aside to address that. You mentioned UIF and the TRS fund. So we expect companies, employers to apply for those funds. We look at funding operational expenses, your lease. But in terms of that also, IDC does not want to see itself being the only funder. We would like to crowd in other funders. So the client has to demonstrate that they've engaged their landlord if they're leasing. They've engaged their banks. They've engaged, UIF. And so as to see that we are not the only funder coming on board. If you have a loan, additional funding or debt with the bank, we would like you to demonstrate that the bank is also giving you some capital or interest holiday, in terms of your loan. So there are significant differences. And I think I need to mention that in terms of the distress funding, we do exclude normal expansion. So if a client says, I want to expand and I need funding to buy additional equipment, we would not necessarily fund that. And I indicated that nobody really knows what's going to happen. So the rationale for expanding at this stage does not exist unless if the client can demonstrate that they actually need funding and they are going to expand successfully. But if you are in distress, how then do you motivate or rationalize expanding? So expansion funding is excluded under COVID distress. We do not also do share buybacks, pardon me. And also payment of non-operational expenses is not covered here. And also with the other relief funding, COVID distress, we don't do normal expansions. I just want to go back to this one of the COVID-19 essentials. So there a client might say, I just need an equipment because I've been manufacturing and I need to add additional line to add and to increase my capacity to manufacture. Or to increase my output, we can consider that, in terms of the essential funding for COVID. We provide revolving credit, so revolving is based on contracts, and revolving works in the form of a revolving or an overdraft facility. You access it, you repay, you can access it again. But as I said, this is a very short-term facility. So expansion is not, as you correctly mentioned, it's not necessarily a short-term. We expect the client to be able to repay us over a medium to long-term. So we might look at that under the normal funding. And I need to emphasize that these funds do not necessarily mean business is not continuing. The normal operations of IDC in terms of clients applying under normal funding applies. However, the rationale for requesting funding during this period will have to be very strong. The motivation to expand under the normal circumstance will have to be very strong. Unless if it's a company that's already been existing and it has contract that it needs to deliver on in the medium to long-term future, and those contracts are still in place. So that is the rationale that we see companies coming to apply for normal funding. However, funding for acquisitions, it's going to be very difficult to come for funding because you want to acquire a business. We will need to indicate and see the rationale for selling as well, because we do not want clients to buy companies that maybe the sellers can foresee that this company is not going anywhere, and then they are then letting it go. You might think you're getting it on the cheap. However, you're bringing in debt on this company, and you might not be able to repay. So yeah, Lazola, there are varying differences in terms of requirements for different funds that are available out there.
Okay, no, thank you so much for that. I think you've provided a lot of clarity. With regards to, I saw in the previous slide, you talk about there's a 300 million which has been set aside for the COVID-19 relief by the IDC. Of that 300 million, is
for the SMEs. So this is,
no, you can go ahead. I just wanted to find out, of that 300 million, is it just for the distress fund, or is it separated between the distress fund as well as the essential supplier fund?
Yeah, so these are the 300 million is ring-fenced finance fund. So it's for our SMEs, and as I indicated, it's companies that generate turnovers of 50 million rand and below. And this one is kept at 50 million. And the other fund, the distress fund, is also available. So IDC in total has set aside close to 3 billion for all these funds. And these funds then are split into different amounts. So in total, it's close to 3 billion. And within that 3 billion, then we've set aside amounts for the small, for the distress, and for essentials.
Okay, no, thank you. Thank you so much for that. Let me allow you to carry on. I'm at least enjoying the presentation.
Yeah, I mean, these are the contact details. As I indicated, for COVID essential supplies, there is an email that clients can apply to. This is covid@idc.co.za. These are for companies that have been provided contracts or orders to service companies that require essential supplies or products. And there's the COVID-19 distress funds there. Clients can access via the IDC website. There is a tab there for apply for funding that they can go through. These are online applications that clients then will be able to upload their information. Our call center email address, it's callcenter@idc.co.za, and the telephone number there is 0860-693-888. Our consultants are available as well to take calls. And regionally, we have a representation as well. Clients can go onto their website, www.idc.co.za, and under the Contact Us tab, they will find information of all the regional offices with contact emails, and that they can then access the details via the website.
Okay.
This is it for me in terms of the presentations. I didn't want to have too many presentations because I'm looking forward to engaging with our audience and listeners with regards to their questions.
No, definitely. But the presentation, I think, was quite comprehensive, to the point. Even a lot of the slides that you put in, I saw them myself on the website when I got onto the website. I think the website is really easy to use, easy to understand. When you go onto the homepage, you immediately have apply now, which I think is fantastic, and it's easy to use for users. So thank you so much for that. I've got a question online here in our chat group. Someone is asking, how is the impact of COVID-19 going to shape the offerings of the IDC going forward?
Yeah, that's actually very interesting, and considering that, you know, as I indicated, IDC does not get funding from government, so it's important that we guard and protect our balance sheet as much we can, so that, you know, it is not eroded. So it's going to be very careful. It's going to be important how we apply these funds, and so the impact, as I said, nobody really knows how long it's going to last. So for that reason, when we scrutinize businesses that have applied to us for funding, we need to make sure that these companies stand a chance of recovering, you know, post-COVID, so that they are able to repay us, and we are also able to service the loans that we've gone out to borrow. So, I mean, I really do not know how long it's going to take for us to get back to the pre-COVID status, if at all. So what we do is we need to make sure we protect our balance sheet as best we can. And we have been very good. I think IDC can demonstrate over the years that we've never really gone to government to be funded. We've managed our balance sheet quite well. However, the impact, as we have seen with the oil price, you know,
yes.
you know, IDC has investments in some of the companies that are directly involved in that industry. So that has impacted us severely as well. So it's going to be critical that we manage our funds and protect our balance sheet as best we can.
All right, no, thank you for that. There's another question, but I think this question, you've already addressed it, but like in the spirit of being inclusive and making sure that we cover everyone's questions, will the IDC also provide business development support over and above financial support? I'd go for it because like you already gave the answer, but like maybe you can just give it a jab.
Yeah, I mean, for companies that qualify and we identify they have a potential really to be funded and be successful, we do provide you know, non-financial support in the form of business support. So what we do when we assess, we look at where the gaps are, you know, for our clients. The gaps could be technical. The gaps could be financial, the gaps could be from a market perspective, or the gaps could be from a management perspective. So when we identify those gaps, then we look at the experts in those fields and we engage them in terms of assisting to plug these gaps. But the companies have to be those that we deem to have potential to be funded by IDC. So yes, there is support, and we're looking internally as well on a continuous basis. We're looking at ways in which we can add value to our clients, not necessarily just provide funding and let them go there. No, we do have our post-investment management department that looks after our clients post-disbursement of the funds. So they manage, you know, the relationship with the clients, ensure that the clients' accounts are up to date. We get financial information, and if the client encounters problems, then they're in touch with our post-investment team that can help, you know, either put some form of a deferment in place to help the client. So we do have support internally for our clients, but also for those that are coming on board as new clients. We do identify the gaps that are there and see how we can plug those gaps so that they can be funded successfully.
No, that's fantastic. Like just listening to what you've just said about your post-investment team, like working with your clients, for me, that begs the question of, do the businesses have like certain reporting requirements, like after accessing the funding? And another one from what you've just said, you talked about post-disbursement. Currently, how much funds have been dispersed by the IDC to businesses?
Okay, so I mean, from the COVID perspective, we've seen a lot of activity in terms of the COVID essentials. To date, we've approved about just over 550 million. That's how much has been approved. The disbursement obviously takes time because then clients have to comply with requirements in terms of, you know, before we can disburse, we sign agreements and we have conditions that the clients have to meet before the funds can be disbursed. So that has been approved. In terms of the COVID distress, we are still in the process of screening and assessing those transactions that have applied. We've got quite a good pipeline of clients and applications to go through. However, not everybody is going to qualify. So we are in the process of screening and assessing those applications. And the COVID for small industrial clients has just been established. It's not very long. It's a few weeks old. It's a few weeks old baby. So that one, once it's out there in the market, then we hope to get quite a lot of good quality applications coming through.
Okay, no, fantastic. So at Entrepreneurship to the Point, we love to keep our conversations short and sweet and to the point and just sticking to our name. Just as parting words, like from yourself as someone who's like an industry expert and knows a lot about funding, like during like normal times and even in this new normal, like what practical advice would you give like businesses, you know, with regards to just applying for funding and just like their normal operations during this time?
Sure. As well, I think I missed your question. Pardon me. I think you asked about some of reporting requirements for our existing clients in the post-investment. Yes, we do. We require management accounts. Sometimes we require them quarterly from our clients because we want to see how they are performing relative to what we had budgeted and what the client had budgeted. So we require management accounts and up to date in terms of if anything changes from a structural perspective, you know, either management changes or they're going to retrench or they're going to add more people. We require that if shareholders change, we require clients to inform IDC timeously. So those are the reporting requirements we do need from our clients. So financial information is key. And our post-investment team also conduct what we call reviews. So they will visit, not now because of lockdown, but they will visit our clients to see the operations, to also look at the equipment that they've bought, ensure that the money that we provided actually went to what was presented to us. So we call that application of funds. So we do conduct those reviews and the teams will write a report in terms of the status of the clients so that we can also foresee gaps or foresee any trouble before it actually happens. So yeah, there are reporting requirements and clients have to be also compliant in terms of these funds. You know, they have to be compliant from a tax perspective, their UIF perspective. So they have to be compliant and they have to be registered as we have indicated. In terms of advice, it's so difficult, you know, to give advice, but to customers in terms of what they can do, because we find so many different sectors. But it's really looking at realistically where your business is at now and what is impacting your business, and managing cash. You know, we're talking about cash, and I indicated that cash flow is the bloodline of every business. And what has happened with the lockdown, it has had such a knock-on effect on everything. You know, so people that have limited cash resources will see themselves struggle to come out of the pandemic, you know, successfully. It's really looking at what you can change, you know, in terms of the business. What is it that you can change, you can do differently? Where can you cut costs without necessarily cutting quality? Engaging with your customers timelessly, engaging with your suppliers timelessly, informing them of where you are, so that, you know, you also can get some sort of relief from them. So it's a challenging time, Azola, for a lot of customers. Technology, can your business really accommodate using technology? Can your service offering, you know, be customized, you know, from a technological perspective? And not every business can do that, and not every business can work remotely, especially the manufacturing sector. You know, it's not a business that can operate remotely. So those are some of the things that I think clients would need to look at, consider, and does it make sense to take debt, you know, onto your books? It has just to be a fair assessment of your business and where it's at. So we are very much aware of the difficulty that businesses and people are experiencing out there.
Thank you so much for your advice. I think the one thing that you just mentioned here at the end, like, does it make sense for you to take debt? I've been having this argument, like, well, I call it a philosophical argument that does it make sense to take out debt to service working capital where you're not going to receive any return.
Exactly.
It can lead to a downward slope. But all in all, Sis Naomi and Charlie, thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much for your insights. I think it was incredibly fantastic. Like, I really enjoyed it. I think it was informative. But for people who didn't get everything, please visit www.idc.co.za. There are contact details which were shown on the screen. They're showing right now. Okay, unfortunately, it's just gone off, but www.idc.co.za. System Charlie, sibonge kakhulu isikhathi sakho during this time. Thank you so much. My name is Azola Mzegandaba. Please do subscribe to our channel at YouTube, as well as our newsletter, www.ettp.co.za. Next up, we're going to have in conversations with entrepreneurs. We are talking to Odo Corporate Services later on today at 2:30. Bradley Cody will be chairing that session. But again, thank you to the ITC. Thank you for taking time to explain the different funding packages that are available. And we'll see you later on this afternoon at 2:30. Thanks for tuning in. Take care.
Thank you. Thanks, Azola. Bye-bye.
Bye. You finished up.